Hey, God bless you today wherever you're at, and whatever you're doing, we want to encourage you to hang out with us just for a couple of minutes. This is a daily reminder, and this thought really comes out of several verses, but one of the verses that I love the most is in Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1. And Paul, or assuming it was Paul, whoever wrote the book of Hebrews, said, "Therefore we ought to give the more earnest heed to those things which we have heard, lest at any time we let them slip." And it's just this real encouragement to continue to go back to those things that we know that we're rooted and grounded in, and continue to keep those things fresh in our heart and in our spirit. In this last several days, we've been walking through some verses out of the chapter of 1 Samuel chapter 17, and just the experience that David had with this giant Goliath from Gath. And so rather than go back on Sundays, as I have said, and try to just teach through the whole thing, we really thought it would be it'd be just fun to walk through a couple verses at a time. So let me read this to you out of 1 Samuel 17, verses 41 and 42. "So the Philistine came and began drawing near to David, and the man who bore the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about, he saw David. He disdained him," or despised him, "for he was only a youth, ruddy and good looking." I'm sure that from the time that Goliath began to go out for those 40 days, day and night, and began to taunt Israel, he never expected to see a boy in his teens walk out there with no armor, no sword, no shield, and all of a sudden he's confronted with David. It's just this amazing story of what God can do in overwhelming, insurmountable odds. He was just a boy. And in his family, he was the eighth son. He was actually the least. As a matter of fact, we know this in the preceding chapter when Samuel came to anoint a king. He looked at Jesse because he couldn't find, in the first seven sons, he couldn't find God's hand. He couldn't find the okay from the father. And Samuel the prophet said to Jesse, "Are all your sons here?" And he said, "That's right. My youngest, the least, is out tending the sheep." So Samuel said, "Call him in." And sure enough, when David came in, the Lord said, "This is him. Anoint him." But naturally, David was the least. He was the most unlikely. Now, I just want you to listen to these verses in 1 Corinthians chapter 1. This is verse 27 and verse 28. "But God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty, and the base things of the world, and the things which are despised." Same word that we find in the story of David and Goliath. God has chosen those things. Listen, God alone determines identity. And we are who we are, not based on anything we could or couldn't do, what we have or haven't done. Who we are is solely in Jesus Christ. I just mentioned earlier that David was the least of his family, and yet he became a king. Gideon was the least in his family, the fifth son. You can find this in Judges 6. And his family, Manasseh, was the least in all of Israel. And yet the angel of the Lord came to him and said, "Hail, thy mighty man of valor." And God used Gideon, the least of the least, to bring freedom and liberty to the nation of Israel. Mary was just in her teens when Gabriel showed up and said, "You're going to conceive and you'll have a son, and you'll give him the name Jesus, for he will save many." She was just a teenager, and God used her as a vessel, the least likely, used her as a vessel to reveal Jesus. And then one last thought, in Acts chapter 4, Peter and John were standing before the council, the high priesthood, and all of their family after they had just healed a man in chapter 3 of Acts. And the Bible says this in verse 13, and I love this, that the council, the high priest, saw that they were unlearned, uneducated. King James, they were ignorant, but they took note that they had been with Jesus. God loves to take the least likely things in this world, the least likely people, and do the most extraordinary things with us. So I just want to drop that in your heart today as you start your day out. God bless you. We'll catch you next time.